Alright, quick update on Axie Infinity. So, since the bottom we've had a fairly decent pump for Axie. We managed to pump up 56%, currently residing about a 48.75% increase in the past week or so. But, when we do look at the macro market structure, you very much can see that everything is unchanged. And I would like to talk about these spikes in volume that we have seen time over time again. But right off the bat, let's talk about the market structure. So, let's not zoom out and draw from every single data point we've got, but you can see, high, lower high, lower high, lower high, and we are still currently in this lower high trajectory. So it's definitely not the first time that Axie has seen something like this as well. And what's very interesting about this is when you do see these spikes in volume, it doesn't always, and in fact it almost never correlates to the exact top. Let's take it back to the 6th of February, where we can see we had this massive spike up, and this market structure with this W formation pushing us far above the 13 EMA before having a very evident blow off top looks exactly like what we're seeing here. It looks exactly like what we saw here, and the volume is the exact same as well. So if we look at the volume on the 6th of February, huge pump up. We did not get we didn't get enough continuation in volume. You can see it was a 1-day spike, and then the next day it just started to slide off the cliff. And this was basically indicative that, bulls had their fun for a day or so. That was basically it though. No one came in to support the trend, and subsequently bears took back over. And what you can see is we had this single day pump. The next day, very interestingly, even though we didn't see that massive continuation in volume, we still managed to poke our head above where we topped out the previous day. What did we do over in this market structure? So you can see massive volume candle, just like we saw here. The next day we saw a pretty decent volume candle, but it wasn't as big as the first one, and subsequently you had the massive run up. The next day you actually managed to come up and take out that high, and even a week or so later you managed to get a little bit of volume coming in that did push us above. But what happened both times, you came up, you crab sideways for a bit, you break down. You came up, you crab sideways for a bit, you break down. And I think we're getting ready for that stage right now. There's also another example of when we did this here. This was a single day pump. We had this massive run to the upside, and once again you can see volume was decreasing, but bulls were still kind of there trying to push this up, running out of steam, running out of money to buy the dip. Subsequently, what did you do? You crab sideways, and just like every other time, you managed to break above that massive spike in volume, but once again there was no continuation and you fell back down. So I've pointed out just in this market structure alone that we've done this time over time again, and we don't need to zoom out much further, because you can see that we did this here. We've done this time over time again. So with that being said, I feel like the local top is probably a lot closer than the bottom. Does that mean that I don't think that this can't take another small leg to the upside? Absolutely not. This could definitely continue having a swing up for the next day or so, but I think when the Asian markets open on Sunday, we are probably going to see a move back down for these. And when we do look at Axie against Bitcoin, smooth out, look at the weekly Heikin-Ashi candles, we see these times where we outperform Bitcoin for a very short period of time, and we really never get continuation. We've basically had a nice pump up. We've had a macro breakdown below the 786 Fibonacci on the Axie BTC pair, and as far as I can tell, we're just pumping up, kind of retesting the 786 range. And once again, I don't need to zoom out. You can look at it yourself if you want, but the market structure is completely unchanged. On the Bitcoin pair, the USD pair, we just have a plethora of lower highs. Now, am I saying that Axie is a shitcoin and it's just going to keep on trending down until it reaches zero? Absolutely not. I'm even personally not a big fan of the Axie ecosystem. I just think, for example, SLP is a very hyperinflationary token, so I'm not interested in that. Also, the Axie Infinity play to earn game, it just looks boring to me, and I really don't think that it's going to be out forever. Like, assuming that Axie is going to be the biggest game in the crypto space would be like assuming that, those old Pac-Man machines would still be popular nowadays. Obviously, these games are going to get better and better over time, and subsequently, sure, Axie is good for trading. It might be good for buying the dip at some period in time, but I don't necessarily think the bottom is in at this moment. So once again, we've crossed over the 13 EMA. We never had that back test, so right off the back we should assume that we're at least going to come down another 16-17% also to tap out this target. Like I said, since my last video, this is what I was predicting. I had to move it up a bit. As you can see, you know, we have moved up a tiny bit since my last video, not too much, but nonetheless my macro price target for Axie's potential bottom is still down at this big green range. So this is what I'm calling for, between the regions of $6 and down here at $1.91. I don't necessarily think it will go all the way to $1.91, but nonetheless I think $6 is a very, very conservative price target for this, especially considering the market cap is 1.5 billion for just a very, very simple play to earn game, and one of the first of its kind. So that's basically all I've got for Axie Infinity. You can also see circulating supply is only 30% as well, so if tons of buyers do not step in and just keep on pushing this up constantly, you are going to see inflation over time, and these type of cryptos with high inflationary mechanics are the ones that are going to suffer the most in the bear market. But with that being said, because of their, I don't want to say low market cap, because of their hype status, I definitely think at some point a tiny bit of Axie, a tiny bit of SLP is something that I am going to be looking at buying towards the latter half of the bear market. But what we're witnessing right now is kind of just like a pump before the dump, in my opinion. Now, why do I think that Axie is going to be breaking down? Because I think all the altcoins are going to be breaking down the next couple of days. Bitcoin, if we look at the Bitcoin chart, it is littered with lower highs everywhere. Lower high, lower high, lower high right here, and I don't necessarily want to speak on the price action in the past 4 hours and say that 21,200 is going to be another lower high. It only happened 4 hours ago, so we're going to wait to see how this plays out. But for example, if you don't see Bitcoin break back above 21,590, we're just going to see another lower high, and typically every single time we confirm these lower highs, we have a massive cascade, and that is what I think is playing out next for Bitcoin. So how does this tie to Axie? Well, we've already talked about how Axie performs against Bitcoin, so we can imagine if Bitcoin is going to be heading to the downside, then Axie is probably going to head to the downside, because Axie BTC is very, very bearish. As you can see, we're pricing Axie Infinity against BTC, and subsequently we can see, we know that this is basically what the Bitcoin chart looks like. Bitcoin's been in a massive bear market for a very, very long period of time now, and because of this, altcoins are also suffering. So these look like the same chart, and what you will notice is Bitcoin's in a bear market, Axie BTC is in a bear market. So until Bitcoin comes down for that final capitulation, what I personally plan on doing is making sure that my Bitcoin bags are packed. I'm making sure I buy the dip down on Bitcoin. Buying at these ranges I think is a great idea for the long term, and when I do think we're in that final capitulation, which by the way, if you don't watch my channel, you don't watch my Bitcoin videos, I think 16,500 is the bottom for Bitcoin. That level is when I plan on looking at some of these altcoins. So, you know, once again, not hating on this project, we like to look at things objectively on this channel, and the fact of the matter is, if you've been buying the dip since $165, you've been getting absolutely wrecked. So it's probably best to sit on the sideline. Yes, I do think we are fairly close to the bottom, but I also do think that we could have at least, and by the way, once again, this is my conservative target, another 65% drop to the downside. There's a lot of technicals, a lot of indicators calling for it, and once again, if we do not see this continuation in volume, if by tomorrow or by the next couple of days we are not still getting these volume candles that are stacking up in favor of the bulls, then unless we see something like this where we just get more bulls step in and in and in and in, then in my opinion we are probably likely to have this pump, crab sideways for a week or so, maybe a couple of days, and then make that massive leg down to approximately $6 to $2, which is all the way down here. So that is what I see planning out for Axie. That is all I've got for you today. Once again, I will be letting you know when I do plan on picking up some Axie, because it is one of the altcoins that I am looking at to make some short-term gains on when I do think the Bitcoin bottom is in. But once again, this is not something that I'd want to hold for the long term. You know, no disrespect against the project, but it's had a fairly large hack over on Ronin. This is one of the first Web3, or it might even be the first Web3 game out there, and subsequently thinking that Axie is going to be great to hold for the long term is kind of like thinking that Pac-Man would be the only game or the best game of all time. And clearly, you know, times change, technology gets better, these Web3 games are going to get better and better over time, and subsequently Axie is basically doomed to suffer boom and bust cycles depending on its hype. So with that being said, there's a plethora of indicators. It looks like we're heading down. We're coming right back up into the resistance of this bear flag. So let's see how this pans out. I think we're probably going down for another 65% drop down to $6 within the next month is when I'm predicting this to pan out. So, you know, somewhere around about here this will probably play out. So that's all I've got for you today. If I had to draw a line of best fit, something like this is probably what I see panning out before ICP has its bottom. So that's all I've got for you today. As always, cowboy out. Peace.